Can I actually see the chat room? Yes. Am I here? Am I here? Hiya, good. All right, can you hear me? It's no longer letting me use the old version. How do I actually get this to work? Okay, thank you. All right, well, if I'm using the new version for the first time, I guess we'll see how well or how poorly or whatever it goes. Let's see. The Urglaawe group here for something. Yeah, there I am. Okay, I'm here. Good. Questions thread. So Hoggle was the last room we did? Okay, good. Sounds about right. Well, one thing I will say about these little live chat sessions is that they're actually forcing us, me, but all of us to actually finally get out the remainders of the room lore that we have in my notes and elsewhere. So although we're using the same PDF document we used the last 2 weeks, we actually have the write-up for the note rune done, and I'll put that in next week. I'm hoping that we'll get several of the other ones done between now and then. It's actually kind of exciting, really. I mean, I'm kind of happy about that. Let's see, I think that was the rooms all I really wanted to talk about. I mean, welcome, this is Urglaawe Live Sex, which I really, really want to post it everywhere, Urglaawe Live Sex, but with those bots doing the maintenance of the community standards in the absence of many employees, I don't know if they're going to be able to distinguish between the English word sex and the Deitsch word sex, which it means six. So find out the hard way. No. All right, perfect. So does anybody have anything before we actually get started? Anybody have any questions or, comments or want to write a poem or something? Ooh, Larry wants to give me money. I'll take that. All right, so let's see. The note room. Actually, no. We finished with Hoggle. So my trusty little overly fat PowerPoint presentation here. Pick up on the other side. Urglaawe, inch, Hoggle. Which brings us to which brings us to note, which is perfect because, well, we have it now. Unfortunately, it's not in this presentation, but if you go to the main Urglaawe group, there is a thread that I started there just, 20 minutes ago or so. Better be in there. Why am I not seeing it? Oh, no, it's in the comments. On the question thread. No, that's not where. Oh, come on. It can't be this scrambly already. Oh, I thought I posted it. Okay, I'll post it real fast. Right? Note room. This is not in the presentation. We'll have the information. It's acting really weird tonight. All my notifications are coming in backwards. And sorry, folks, I have technical difficulty. Actually, this is just me being lazy because I didn't get it done. I should have gotten this done a little bit earlier. Let me guess, Sarah. Sophia's probably saying exactly where the post that I'm looking for is, but I'm going to copy it since I'm here now anyway. Oh, it starts with caveat. That's right. Yes. Let's see. And now let me go over here and see what Sarah's saying. Okay, I see. All right, so here, I'm going to put this here. This is the note rune text. I'm posting it right now into the main Urglaawe group, so it should be the top post. I know it looks like it says not rune, but it's note. So this I'll be putting into the presentation next week. We have several of the runes that are coming up are actually going to be pretty interesting. I really did not realize how much stuff we actually had until... Oh, you bumped it, thank you. Well, it's there twice now. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start right with the note rune. All right. This one, I think several of my colleagues actually use this one fairly often, particularly when it's related to bruising. I'm trying to remember the first time I actually saw it used that way. I think it was actually when I think it was 2008. It was like 2008. It was one of the earliest interviews where they told me that they were specifically not using a cross because it looked like a cross when they were first doing it. And I said, "Oh, you use the cross to try to prevent a bruise or an abrasion." Like, no, this is not an abrasion. This is a response to an emergency. This is a response to a need. And then when they drove it out by hand, you can see it was actually our cognate of the note rune, of the Northese rune. So it does turn up in Hexerai a lot, even outside of the Urglaawe context, as a rapid remedy for bruising. I use it also when I'm doing work, Hexerai work, on places where I sense a bruise, or where I sense a sore spot or a elf shot, as they call, like one of those areas that just you seem to get these sudden jolting pains. It is a rune of reactive ice, which makes it useful in combating afflictions of proactive ice, sedentary issues, we talked about those last week, and of proactive fire, growths and boils. Note is a building block rune in a sense. This is my theory here, because it represents the reactive aspect of primal ice. Indeed, the fulfillment of the need versus a want is essential for life to survive. So the needs had to be met from the very beginning in order for life to continue. So let me check the room, make sure no questions going up. And good evening, everybody. It's very, very nice to see everybody. Let's see now. Next up would be here. The need itself may be static, but the efforts to meet the need require energy and action. In rune readings, note can represent underlying issues or backstories to the other runes pulled. Often the client is unaware of these underlying needs, and sometimes we detect them and then trying to ask them questions about okay, for instance, actually, this is kind of funny because my mother and I just had a chat earlier today about, my mother's very Christian, but she has some talents, and she's very astute, and she said it was for a period of years and then it stopped, but she could see auras. And so she was trying to always dither over what she should do, because usually when they were showing, it was somebody either had an illness or had or she actually expected them to die. And unfortunately, she was always right very, very soon thereafter. And I remember her at the time when one of them had passed away, thinking about that. Well, should I have gone up to them and said, hey, you might want to go get this checked, but that could also cause a whole different set of problems. It could set a panic if she's wrong. But these backstories, when we see things, we have to figure out ways to present it so that it would at least get the client to consider either checking with a doctor or taking a different action than they're planning on taking in various things. It's really because I'm thinking about this myself. If somebody comes up to me and says something, hey, you make sure that you don't go to work tomorrow the same way that you go normally, I actually probably would just divert my way. But if they're telling me something that I'm not sensing myself, I actually might feel a little bit like, what the hell's wrong with this person? Or or it might panic me. Like if my mother went up to somebody and said, I'm seeing a gray aura around you. You really have a feeling you're going to die within the next day or two. You might want to see a doctor. That could easily set off a panic. So I think a lot of us actually still need to. I think that as Braucherei is now in the modern world, we probably need more counseling kinds of things too. We need to understand how to talk to people. The world's different from what it was like even in the 1920s and the 1930s. And I just think it's something that we just need to be able to present stuff to people, better to people, and be able to clue people in without necessarily setting off a panic. Now, Sophia also posted that the Urglaawe charm, which utilizes the note rune for bruising, has been posted to the Urglaawe group. Now, that one my mother actually did use on me a lot. Stevie, actually, yeah, I'll handle the Urglaawe, and we'll go back to what Stevie's comment there is. The Urglaawe charm, my mother actually used that on me when I was a kid, but she didn't draw. She drew little circles, like she just drew little, like she was rubbing a chicken dirt in. Did we talk about that at all, the Urglaawe charm? Because it's worth talking about. I'll cover it sometime during this lecture, just in case. So Stevie said, I've struggled with the issue. This is the issue of how to tell people to be cautious or, to take a certain action or something, because of having dreams that correctly predicted death. Yeah, all it takes is like one prediction to come true, and you have yourself a whole different set of problems. But 1 second. Hold on 1 second, please. Okay, so yeah, all it takes is for you to predict one or two things that are really bad, correctly, and then you start getting kind of panicky anytime you have any of these things. I don't know. Sophia, what's your note to? All right, I'll let her type it out. Because I've had quite a few of those, correctly myself. Luckily, none of them's ever really been quite that dire. But I remember the incident where my mother saw the man with the aura in church, and she actually whispered it to my sister, and it was, that was kind of very unsettling set of days, particularly since he was a friend of my father's and of the family's. But and then after that, when it came up again, oh, we didn't. Okay, thank you. My mother kind of hedged away from that stuff anyway because of her faith, but I think it also made her not want to deal with it. In some ways, I kind of had that same issue going with clairaudience. But anyway, so back onto this, the main route here. These backstories, I think a lot of us who do rune reading sometimes see certain runes as just telling, cluing you in that there's more going on, or there's something that you're missing, or something that the client is missing. And I would say that note is one of the primary runes that does that, at least for, well, Sophia is the one who suggested the entering this, so it's one of her notes, but it applies to me also. Yeah, it probably is one of the bigger ones with that. So some of these underlying issues relate to restriction, resistance, enduring hardships, need fire, survival, core needs, hard work, pain for gain, life lessons, stopping blood flow, mind shift, all of which are subtleties of the note rune. The mind shift one always resonates with me because I always say that, in order for you to go make the transition from Christianity or whatever religion really to any of the heathen denominations requires a mind shift, particularly since we are in a predominantly monotheistic culture, a society. And the entire question of dualism and just the sheer overwhelming presence of a dominant religion in any society can impact the lesser religions around them. And when we come in with certain, learned beliefs, learned habits, preconceived notions, whatever, that are based in that particular mindset, it can actually make it much more difficult for us to actually understand some of the tenets of heathenry itself. And Urglaawe does require a mind shift, and it's and the note rune would be a clue. Might be a clue. Like, you could have a rune spread that looks pretty good, but that note rune might be telling you, hey, you need to think about this, or you need to understand that your vision is clouded by your youth, or how you were brought up as Catholic or Mennonite or whatever. To me, it's also a gut check. And this is also, I think Vic wrote this, or can affirm that your intuition is correct. This can also be the energy behind the clues one gets about retaining objects or detecting curses, which ties into spring cleaning. Detecting curses is that's a skill that I actually can detect them, but I can't always trace them back to where they came from. But the note rune actually should be able to help with that. Let's see. It's also a rune of dire circumstances. This is the one that panics a lot of people, whether serving as a warning or being used to recognize the situation and to attune or open oneself up to the resolution. The rune of dire circumstances is the one that I think a lot of people first see with Navis when they're studying the Elder Futhark, and they panic because, oh my gosh, dire circumstances, it's going to be hard to get through, kind of like with Hoggle and transformation, and people start saying, oh my god, it's the rune of death. At some points in all of our lives, there's going to be dire circumstances, and sometimes the note rune may actually be cautioning us to take care of these things before they become dire circumstances. And I'm thinking about a reading that I once did with somebody who she had the note that she was going to go look into getting a new job, and she was going to quit her old job before she actually had the new job. And the note rune came up in a reading. And the reason she wanted to do this is she wanted some time off to do like some short traveling to some of her family members. And the note rune came up in the reading, and I said, you might want to reconsider this because, until you actually have that job, you're risking everything. Well, she didn't take that advice, which, it's her right to do. And sure enough, that job didn't come through. They hired somebody else. And if she was so sure that she had it, that, Anyway, so then she really was in dire circumstances because she no longer had a job, and she had quit her job, and her employer didn't want to give her unemployment. So, take these things as they come if you're doing rune readings. Many of you who do rune readings are very astute at this stuff already. If you're just getting started with runes, try to really understand the intricacies, the interplay, and the subtleties of the runes. And I actually do, when I do my readings, I will have Merkstav's runes. If certain runes turned upside down will mean something different or the opposite from what they mean when they're standing right side up, but not everybody does that. But yeah, this can be a rune of dire circumstances, but take it for what it's worth. it may be guiding you toward the way out. Let's see, in contrast to some other cultures' interpretation, note is also a rune of fettering and unfettering depending on the need of the moment. It's the need of the moment. So, like, I got to tell you that I would like to do some note on my head because I keep getting Sunday migraines now. Don't know why, but this is the third week in a row, although last week I think was bad. The week before wasn't too bad. But I need to actually get this stuff and understand what's fettering me, on Sunday mornings or Saturday nights that leads to these things. And also of fettering and unfettering, of relationships that have gone awry, abuse of chemicals, alcohol, whatever. They are essential fetters, and the note rune can identify them and can also help to unfetter them if the person is willing to do the work alongside it. Unfortunately, the runes could give you all the advice in the world, but if we don't follow through on what we're reading from them, lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Let's see. Note is also associated with preparation, setting the building blocks, back to that ice again, for needed change, application of consciousness to meet the need. And this is the one that I kind of thought was interesting, the cosmic provision. This is perhaps stated most clearly within Hexerai, but it's actually a common theme in the Deitsch culture. Note is a rune of universal cosmic provision, and we all play a role in that function. We sometimes are the provision of the fulfillment of need of others and vice versa. This is one of the principles of Hexerai. It's in Braucherei too, but not stated so clearly. That sometimes we are the note rune. We are the needed item. If a client needs us to heal them or to advise them, we are serving the purpose that the rune is there for. So this brings us to the interdependence, service, and virtues of kinship, compassion, and troth. That which is needed is provided. We need to be open, aware, and ready to act to receive it. So essentially, what do they say? What's the other phrase that they say in English? When a door closes, a window opens, or something like that. The universe does provide. We just don't always necessarily notice it. And I've actually kind of thought this one through. Does the universe absolutely always provide? Like, if somebody's drowning, does the universe have a provision there for some way out? I don't know, but in terms of the note rune and the self-improvement, the self-evolution, the tools are there. They may just not necessarily be there in the way that you see them. All right, so does anybody have any questions on that one? I'm sorry that I am, again, cheating and reading directly from the writing. And unfortunately, I'm dealing with a little tiny script tonight, but we'll check that question thread. Nothing here. Okay. All right, so if nobody has any questions on note, when I was writing this stuff out and drawing it from different places and also from my own memories and experiences and from those of others, I was kind of excited to see just how much actually came through, how it is consistent with Northese, but has its little cultural distinctions. And I just think that's one of the things that's kind of cool about the runes is we have all these different alphabets, and they have a lot of general threads that go through them, but they're still culturally unique, and people are called to different forms of them. So, all right. Next up. All right, so note. Isaac. We didn't talk about Isaac yet? I thought we did. For some reason, I thought we talked about this one. Because the name of this one is driving me crazy because ice doesn't make the I sound that it needs to make for Deitsch. But Isaac does, and that's how at least one of those people worked their way around it. And but Isaac and ice don't really mean exactly the same thing, and that could be good or bad. So each equivalent has some naming trouble. Ice. This is what slide is this? This is 45. The latter, which means icy, at least captures the short I sound that is associated with the rune. Although ice is static, icy is not fully static. Well, ice isn't totally static, but the meaning of stillness or stasis is still carried by the rune. It is the rune of primal ice, which became an icy and was part of the formation of the universe, or I should better say multiverse, or multiverse. Short of modern technology with the structure of dams, only ice could slow or halt the flow of rivers. It is the rune of proactive ice, which makes sense. Excess proactive ice energies often manifest themselves in afflictions that arise from a sedentary lifestyle, such as atrophy, weight imbalances. Obsessive compulsive disorder is also seen as an affliction of proactive ice. In this case, it is the mind that bears the excess energies. Outbursts related to OCD are more typically associated with reactive fire, reactive spirit, or proactive venom. Unfortunately, in my line of work, as many of you know, I am a special ed teacher. I see many of these a lot, and I can see these energies on a lot of our students and residents. The application of the Isaac rune can aid in combating afflictions of reactive fire, such as abrasions, some forms of heart disease or cancer. It can be used to fight proactive fire disorders, such as erysipelas or St. Anthony's fire, some forms of cancer and some forms of heart disease. Note that the heart disease and cancer do not always have clear causes, and Isaac energies may be applied in either. Isaac energies may be applied to thwart reactive ice energies that come from injuries, particularly of the joints. So, like, if you injure your elbow, your funny bone, or whatever, applying Isaac energies to it could actually help to avert too much of a little bit of difficulty. Let's see what we look at here. In the rune Gil I did. Okay. Next down, Yor. Yor is one of the more common runes found for several reasons. First off, it is the rune of proactive elemental time. Embracing time as an element requires a bit of a mindset shift for most people. Time in Braucherei, even for many Christian Brauchers, is not linear, but is also an oversimplification to say that time is circular or cyclical. Time is actually a very complex concept, and this complexity is reflected in the Urglaawe Jaarsrad, or the Wheel of the Year, where there is no simple starting point. I feel like I talked about this recently, but the official calendar year begins on the 1st of January, or Hadding as we call it, along with the rest of society. The spiritual year begins with the spring equinox. The bright half of the year begins at Vonanacht, and the dunkel half begins at Allerliebeteal, and Yule and Midsummer herald the beginning of the solar year. Solar stages. Some say that the Wheel of the Year operates on a tilt, but I think it's more accurate to say that the measurement of time is subject to the needs of humanity. All right, we use this rune an awful lot. And I actually associate this rune with Hull of myself personally, because of her whole concern with the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. But I think I comment on this, so I'll comment it after if I don't see it in here. However, time itself as an element may be just as complicated. Many Braucherei and Hexerei charms, remedies, or spells refer to the manipulation of time, or at the very least, the movement through time, taking steps backward, to the side, forward, clockwise, counterclockwise. There are often signals to attempt to include time in a working. There are some that, like, there's one thing that tells you that if you have I think I have this posted on Braucherei.net or somewhere, actually this was one that this is an even better one. This is one that years ago I was mugged by somebody down in Philly, and he actually drove his car right up and pinned me into an area where I couldn't get out of, and then he demanded money for me to get out. And so I ended up hexing him and his car. And when I hexed him and his car, I felt guilty about it later on, as the good Anabaptist boy that I was. And so I ended up calling a Braucher, and he advised me that I had to walk back for 3 days. I had to take 3 steps backward to undo the time between it, because it was only actually 3 days since it happened, but he I had to undergo this 3 times a day, like 3 steps a day for 3 days. And then he gave me other things that I was supposed to do to remove the hex. Well, Smarty here remembered to remove the hex on the guy, but forgot to remove the hex on the car. And I did see that car eventually. But the time motions oftentimes involve walking backwards. There's also one that I can think of. It's a sympathetic one where you pour a glass of water and then you pour the water back in to represent the undoing of time, or there's all sorts of stuff, and they're actually kind of cool in a way. I find time to be absolutely fascinating, bewildering, a little bit sad sometimes, obviously, but it's just time. What do they say in Gone with the Wind? Do not squander time. It is the stuff life is made of. Even though I don't believe in time exactly that way, I believe that we are bound to time here in the linear world or in our physical world. And just imagining what it would be like to be free of the shackles of time sometimes is kind of interesting. So anyway, several plants and other entities are also associated with time work in various contexts. We don't talk enough about herbs and stuff yet. I think that's going to be something we're going to have to be construing as a guild, the Rune Guild or the Urglaawe Guild, or the anybody who's interested in Deitsch herbalism. But this part here is actually very interesting. Among them are mistletoe and lichens, which are said to be survivors of prior cosmic days. And elder, birch, tansy, valerian, bedstraw. Now, those two, mistletoe and lichens, some of their properties are kind of bizarre, and it is believed, and it is also, there's a little bit of conjecture that perhaps this is why mistletoe was how Balder got killed, because it's a survivor from a prior cosmic day. The cosmic day thing I've referenced here several times, but I haven't actually really referred to it directly. The term cosmic day is not our own, but the same concept appears in many different cultures, that you go through these periods of great enlightenment, great expansion, consciousness grows for many different types of living beings, and then you go into a cosmic night where it rests and everything kind of just moves at a very, very, very almost standstill pace. And these two are, as far as I know, these two, I'm trying to think if I heard of any, mistletoe and lichens are supposed to be, I think they're the only ones that somebody said that they were the only known survivors from these prior cosmic days. And mistletoe and lichens represent the macro cycles if you're going to use them in any sort of working. So mistletoe and you can scrape lichens off trees. We do actually use them to represent the cosmic day, or the larger time cycles. The movement of time through cosmic days and nights, and the association of mistletoe to Frigg by a Scandinavian lore could be a reflection of the Urglaawe belief that Freyd's knowledge is cosmic and covers all of time. Similar expressions relate to Holla as well, but Freyd or Frigg's lore is far more prevalent. However, it is also relevant that mugwort and elder are used in time workings as well. Holla is seen as the deity who seems most concerned with the evolution. You can actually use mugwort. Elder you could, but I wouldn't, because it usually ends up involving flame in trying to speed things up. This is a well, actually, I think this has already come up in other contexts, so I'll tell you now. Hexerai, they'll just hex somebody if somebody needs to be hexed. Urglaawe looks at least the traditional Christian viewpoint of Urglaawe, doesn't hex anybody because that's of Satan. But what they will do is they will bless someone's actions to speed time up, so that they get their payout faster. If he's doing something wrong, they'll say, well, you know what, you just keep going. You just keep going. Bless your heart. You just keep going. and speeding that up so that it can, in linear time, will end faster to all the victims of whatever that person is doing, but it'll move much faster than it would if the person were just doing it without a blessing. So yes. Oh, was it discussing game? Okay, maybe it was. Okay. Yeah, I know I'm talking about several of these subjects in different forums, and I'm starting to get a false memory syndrome. All right, let's see. Next, it's important to note that the cycles we are talking about are move like the cycles we are talking about are like spirals. Helixes, and Victoria always has a lot of good insight on the helixes, are tangential circles rather than simple circles. And that's one reason I think that the R rune for us looks more like much more like they're spooning than the 2 sevens that they look like in the Elder Futhar. This is another point that is difficult to fathom, but just as time is not a one-dimensional line, it is also not a two-dimensional circle. Instead, the imagery that comes out of our folk traditions is a multi-dimensional and vibrant. It just seems like, that however long ago some of these concepts got in, the multi-dimensional thing is definitely not from, probably from the 1800s or 1700s, if not before. That is not a new thing. That came up in almost every guild that I was able to actually find somebody who was a member of. That the actual nature of life and the universe in existence is really, really, really just amazing, complicated, and changes. But so, for example, the image of the spiral reflects being close to where we were at another point in time. So when we say time is circular, that's actually not true, because you don't actually come back to literally everything being exactly the same as it was at a prior point in time. So like, but what you might have is your little deja vu things where it's a tangential circle. I should probably have drawn this stuff out. And you might hit a certain point where some things are familiar or some things are repeating themselves, while in a different context or with different people, etc. Let's see, we are in a similar phase right now to that of last July. Okay, I don't know what that was about. That's left in from when I first wrote this. Let's see, what are we in a similar phase to? I don't know, this is a kind of a unprecedented set of months here, but okay, for instance, this disease hit, all right, so which kind of, every now and again, these diseases hit, and people's lives change, people's lives are lost or whatever, but this is SARS-2, this is the COVID, not the original SARS, but yet some of the same things are happening, although this is definitely worse. Perhaps more challenging to understand is the notion that our consciousness can land at the same point in time while our physical forms are in different points in time. All right, I have too much of a headache to wrap my head around what I wrote myself, but some practitioners view this as the cause of deja vu. It's like the Matrix. Time concepts get even more complicated when we consider that there is a belief in that exists alongside our realm, but are out of our time phase. I kind of like this one. It is interesting to note that I have a couple of stories of speculation that we can sometimes break into their phase and appear as ghosts to those entities. Like, in other words, there could be a whole other universe living right alongside us, but they're in this, their time is just ever so slightly different, and so they're phased out. They may appear as ghosts. I actually think that there was a Star Trek: The Next Generation episode that kind of touched upon this idea, and it's kind of fascinating. Let's see. Okay. Thank you for adding the link, Sophia. I appreciate that greatly. Okay. There's something else here. Alrighty. So this is now slide or page number 54. The rune Yar carries with it all these mysteries, from the daily cycles to the cosmic cycles, and we are subject to and move within all of these layers. This is why time is seen as an element. The time at which something happens or does not happen could be a key factor in its success. The longer that something has been in place, the more difficult it often is to remove, or the weaker it becomes. Kind of like the towers. As a rune of proactive time, excess yacht energies can manifest themselves in dementia, some liver disorders, and some forms of emotional disorders associated with the thymus gland. Yor can be very effective in combating reactive salt afflictions such as heat stroke and hypothyroidism, and against some proactive salt afflictions such as hyperthyroidism and edema. Additionally, it can help to contain or to thwart reactive time diseases such as Alzheimer's disease. Now, I'm going to put a caveat in that sentence. The theory is that it can help. I don't know that there's any actual proof, but the belief is that it can help. All right, so any questions up to this point so far? Yeah, the movie The Others, did I? Yeah, okay, that actually helps. So, this is an interesting, I don't know, the whole out of phase thing. It'd be kind of creepy to discover there's a whole bunch of other living beings right here. But, we already had that with our land spirits and other beings. All right, so next up. Are there any questions? I'm going to check the room. Okay. All right. Next is Iva. This is one of these problems that actually solved itself, thankfully. Iva, we proposed the name Iva when it came out of a later interview for Ivaz. Presented name from Hexorai was Guile. Suggested corrected name is Iva or you. The runes Ivaz and Avaz are often confusing to students of the runes, but I was surprised at the conflation of their names in Hexorai practice. I feel like I talked about this too. Both being called Guile, while having different lore associated with the symbols. That's very confusing. Two runes with the same name. The vowel sound is that of Ivaz, but the literal meaning of the word horses is more similar to Avaz. However, clearly the two different symbols, one resembling Ivaz and one resembling Avaz, were used in different settings, and I think it became time for us to recognize that this is a conflation that we will have to separate. Focusing solely on the equivalent of Ivaz, I propose that we took this Deitsch cognate Iva, which actually did turn up in an interview with somebody, and then make use of the uses of the runes that fell under Guile with the symbol that resembles Ivaz. In other words, taking all the Ivaz lore away from the word Guile and putting it under Iva. For this description, I will use Iva as the name, but I will take feedback from the Urglaawe, Brauchrai, and Hexorai communities as we move forward. All right. Iva is a rune of proactive elemental venom. This may sound a little scary at first, but venom has its uses. Many creatures are avoided by others because they are known to deliver venom. Some non-poisonous species evolve to mimic poisonous species to deter predators. Toxic trees and plants are often left undisturbed in the wild. In fact, the yew tree itself is often left undisturbed because all its parts, excluding the berries, but including the seeds within, are toxic to humans. Even the pollen carries toxins. Yew toxicity becomes even more potent when dried, and burning yew carries the toxins in the smoke. Kind of like poison ivy there. Yew is one of the candidates for the imagery of the world tree, and more recent linguistic study has shown that the word Yggdrasil is possibly derived from an Old Norse Iga, I can't pronounce that, or Drasil, coming from Indo-European dare, meaning pillar or support. This differs from prior belief that Yggdrasil is an ash, but the topic today is the yew. On hot days, yew trees can release gaseous toxins, rather proactive, that can cause hallucinations. Okay? It is interesting to note that it is believed by many that the sacred tree at the heathen temple in Uppsala was a yew. As a rune of proactive venom, excess Iva energy can manifest itself in some autoimmune disorders, but it's also associated with overthinking, overworrying. It can also be used to combat some ailments associated with proactive venom, including other autoimmune disorders, and notably certain cancers at a fight fire with fire action. It's almost like homeopathic. Indeed, the chemotherapy medication Taxol is derived from the Pacific yew, and the European yew has the same constituents, but in less reliable potency. Taxol is in the medical field often used in the medical field often to treat ovarian cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer, Kaposi sarcoma, cervical cancer, and pancreatic cancer. Most of these would be associated with proactive venom, but lung cancer and Kaposi sarcoma would be associated with reactive elemental venom. Iva can be used to weaken the energies of reactive venom as well as proactive. That's a venom. Yeah, venom really does have its use, so I'll talk about this next. Additionally, Iva may be used to combat ailments of air, including the proactive cough and the sleep apnea and the reactive asthma and allergy issues. The rune is actually very versatile, as it would easily fit into Braucherei and Hexerei practice. Serpent energies and references appear in both practices, as do other venomous or toxic animals and plants. I think, was it Teresa who asked about snakes on the Urglaawe list? Snakes are definitely presented in an almost schizoid manner in Braucherei. I believe the older stuff is probably seeing snakes as beneficial, and then the overlay stuff ends up having snakes be evil. But venom can do a lot of, energetic venom, literal venom, theoretically. I don't use venom on anybody, but actually that's not true. I do use venom on paper sometimes. It can be very, very powerful in delivering the death sting to unwanted actions. Yes, I'm referring to a hex. Serpent energies, let's see. Okay, so the rune and or its reactive counterpart, Duna, or Dorn or Thurosaz, may be used alongside these chants and charms in energetic and especially in sympathetic uses. The one I was referring to is sympathetic. In particular, this is a rune capable of carrying very powerful and effective curses, which is something that requires careful, enlightened, and wise utilization, because one can easily cast a hex that kind of gets out of control. So does anybody have any questions or comments about Iva? Let's see. Eckhart's actually sleeping in a linden tree. And there is significance there, which that must have come up at the Camp Tish too, because the linden trees are associated with like communal gatherings and conversations, and essentially raising awareness and things like that. So I think that Eckhart being sleeping inside the bark of the linden tree is related indeed to, I think, didn't this come up somewhere else? Oh man, I'm sorry. I'm just having like a little pulsating here, and my memory's just really shot. But yeah, you know what? Somebody, actually, I'll type it in here myself. I do want to look that up and make sure it gets posted in here. Oh, while we're still on them, the letter G has absolutely nothing to do with the rune guile other than the name. This is answering Myra's question on the question thread. The G is the letter G, the functional letter G, is carried by the Geva rune. Guile is just what they were calling both Ivaz and Avaz as cognate, because it has the I sound in it. It's kind of like Fakal. The actual focus sound is the K. I mean, I really wish that another word would present itself, but it does mean torch. It does mean flashlight. But yeah, so let's see. Monica, specifically for those, for the types of cancer that I listed out, yes, it could be. How much success it has, I don't know, because I've honestly never used them specifically. That's Laura's passed over to me by the Hexerei practitioners. some of whom claimed that they had worked. So, I mean, some cancers are pretty nasty ones. I mean, no cancer is particularly great, but pancreatic, if we could get them to work or put more energy into them so that they do work better and more smoothly and become more readily available, and they grow in the well of weird, absolutely, I would go for it. Okay, so the next rune is the missing one, our actual blank rune. Everybody talks about Ralph Bloom's Book of Runes and how he put the blank rune in there. Well, he didn't need to do that because apparently somehow within this small system that we have here in Pennsylvania, we had one because we had a rune that we know stood for the letter P, but has no symbol. We don't know what it looks like. And we're gonna end up having to reconstruct this because we know it existed. I had done some conjecture that maybe it was being covered by Bercano, but I found in my notes that people were saying no, we had speculations of things. But so the sole rune for which we have neither some sort of symbol nor any significant lore, we have some but not significant, coming either from Hexarai or Brauchrai, is Perthro. During the interviews, at least one respondent said he recalled a sound for P, but in his learning he did not recall the symbol, but knew it related to time and ailments related to the actions of time upon a body. A couple of others speculated that it existed, one thinking it might have been called pile, which the arrow, the dart, are the hand of a clock, and the other pipe, or pipe. Of all of these, the hand of the clock is kind of the one that actually catches my attention most. In short, we don't know, but there is a starting point with time in the hand of the clock, pile. It's all conjecture when it comes to this rune symbol and its name, but we can hypothesize an association with reactive time energy, mostly because we don't have anything else. But a lot of people have been expressing since I first wrote about this that they kind of like the pile name, and some people have started to use it. I think we probably are going to go with this. We recognize that the system is not perfect, and so we're going to have to do some manual reconstruction. Heck, the element assignments, we borrowed that from Ig's book. Well, not all of it, but some of it, and it's part of the whole process. Now the next one, let's see, we skipped the next one we don't have in here yet. Schild, Suna, Spitz, Berka. Yeah, so we actually finished the routes that we have done. To say it, but we're actually done with that a little bit early. I apologize for reading off the cue card, but I'm having enough trouble just trying to maintain not having my accent come bursting out. Let's see, what time do I have this scheduled to end tonight? I know you're all disappointed there's no live sex going on here. Funny, I'm actually OCD about very few things, but titles and names of anything that we create, I try to keep uniform. So when I started with Urglaawe Live Sve, number 2, and then I went back and added the Ains, I didn't even think about what was going to happen when we got to number 6. But, Urglaawe 6. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, Perthro itself looks like, the lock cup or, but, talk about the Hinkeldrecht charm more in depth? Okay. That's a good one. All right. Yeah, I'm actually inclined to use the Perthro symbol simply because we don't have another one. Although if we use pile, it would actually make more sense. The hand of a clock would look more like Spitz or Tsiu, the equivalent to the T-Boz rune, though. Maybe we have to think about this more. All right, the Hinkeldrecht charm. Where did I talk about this? Was this at the pub mood, the chat mood? Because I did this recently. Ooh, setting up. All right, who wants to take on that? Stevie, you could get started. You could post your first Urglaawe romance stories right Huygens Heathen Hof. Um, get the ball rolling. Those Amish romance novels they're definitely something. Some of them are really, and that's partially thanks to one of my friends who asked me for some advice. Anyway, so the Hinkeldreck charm. What do I write about? Hinkeldreck is chicken shit, and this is actually one of these. It's a commonly used charm, very commonly used even now, but it's also very commonly mocked by people as they get farther away from the culture because it sounds kind of weird. Hey, you're using chicken shit in your healing. Some people do use literal chicken shit for it because certain theories are that some of the constituents in chicken shit can actually be beneficial. But I'll just roll their eyes like chicken shit. So anyway, what happened is you could fall over or whatever. Little kids, this happens with little kids a lot. And hey, you scrape your knee or you bump your knee or whatever, and you get up and you may not be crying yet. Usually you're looking to see how your mother reacts. If your mother comes running, oh, then you're going to cry and have if she laughs it off, you're likely to laugh it off, but they still might put this charm on. So the charm goes basically, heilig, heilig, Hinkeldreck, besmaris frias alles weg. Right? So what that means is holy, holy chicken dirt, chicken shit. By tomorrow morning early, everything is gone. And it's a soothing thing. It's a sympathetic healing. Unless they're actually applying it, then it could theoretically be medicinal. Where do I gotta find that article? Hold on. I got because I've far more going to be able to remember now. But my mother did use this on me when I was a kid, and a lot of people do make fun of it. But I kind of like it because it's cultural, and it worked for me when I was a kid. Again, it could be all placebo effect with sympathetic magic, but as long as the pain is gone, what are you going to say? Let's see what. Hold on a second. Somebody. Okay. Yeah, I can wait. And I'm going to open up another PowerPoint presentation where I think I have this inclusion. Some people carry lucky coins. Some people carry chicken shit. Some people carry bird poop. But he's got a track. The word inkle by itself is funny. That's all I said about it in here. I know I said more about this somewhere else. Oh yeah, actually here it is. Oh yeah, this is actually considered first aid brauerei, commonly known, and so actual chicken dirt. Sometimes it really did happen. Secondly, this also has another side effect that it is possible that the Hinkeldreck was purposely put in there to sound silly, makes the actual wound into a small deal. In other words, you're belittling the bruise so it loses its power. My mother always did it with her index finger clockwise while saying the chant over the bruise site, and then it's sealed with the note rune. Not everybody does the sealing with the note rune. That's more of our Urglaawe thing with some of these people from Hexerai. Yes, I mean this is a commonly used Pennsylvania Dutch. Stacy has a never-ending supply of dried parrot poop, and I got to tell you that's something that I'm sure a few people here could say, but not me. I had a parakeet survive long in a house with 8 cats. See what else about that? Do I have any other notes in there? The belittling of the the belittling. Um, the whole belittling of wounds that's a very common sympathetic thing where injuries, and considering the recent bouts that I've been having with depression, I need to take this into my head myself. But injuries, illnesses, very easily become something that we identify ourselves by. I'll talk frankly. Generally speaking, I've always been pretty happy, but I've been dealing with depression since October, and I have to admit that it's beginning to change my perspective on myself and my outlook on myself sometimes, and I don't really like it because it really is not who I am. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully, it's just a midlife crisis. Go out and buy a yellow sports car and have it all be over. First, I need the money for the yellow sports car, but when that stuff it starts to take over everything, it just happens so fast, and so I'm quite sure that a lot of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Or you get a diagnosis of something, and that becomes your identity, and that can, for many people, that ruins their quality of life, or dashes goals or hopes and dreams that they had. And it may be a reality. Some diseases do absolutely for you unable to do a lot of the things that you wish to do, but a lot of others can be managed, or you can adjust or accommodate for. So this is where the belittling of a disease or something comes into being. And it's not belittling the person for having it. It's taking that disease and talking down to it and talking it down, and making it to such that it can be dismissed from the consciousness of doing what you want to do. Of course, you still have to tend to it in a proper way. This is actually probably, one of the reasons I like doing these Urglaawe live sessions is because I come across stuff that is not actively in my memory. Now, I have a mind like a steel sieve. I'm 50 years old, and I tend to remember things contextually when they come up, but if I need something, I can't always remember where it is. And now that I'm sitting here thinking about this, I'm thinking I need to teach my apprentices how to belittle things and let them belittle the hell out of my depression. But I don't know. But that's something you could everybody could kind of learn in a way, is to, when you know that you're identifying yourself by something that is not really helping be who you actually are, not enjoying being yourself so much anymore, it either needs to be managed, tended to, whisked away, belittled, or something. You have to recognize the realities of life. Once things start governing you, this is another kind of Urglaawe slogan. Control the situation rather than the situation controlling you. And that's a kind of it's easier said than done. See, what does Stacy say here? Belittling disease can also reduce the illness in the mind of the client, which perhaps can reduce their resistance and let the disease go. As long as they're not shirking on actually following through on their doctor's advice or whatever. Absolutely. Different resonate with different people. There are things that resonate with most of us, whom I know in person here. I tend to think, oh, well, most people feel that way. And then I come across people who don't feel that way about something. I was like, wow, I think there's some cultural differences there. I don't know. But yeah, sympathetics, we'll talk about that stuff, because I'm going to continue to do these live chats, hopefully days without migraines. But and we'll after those are done, we'll probably take on another subject, and I don't know, we have a lot. But sympathetic magic is specifically Braucherei or Hexerei, not Urglaawe per se. But we'll figure out. I want to be very clear that Urglaawe and Urglaawe on the one hand and Braucherei and Hexerei on the other hand are related. They influence each other. They're maybe even kind of wrapped around each other, sort of like a wisteria around a tree. But they are not the same, because Urglaawe technically can be practiced in any religious context, spiritual context, except for the lack of one. And same thing with Hexeride. But let's just think of this through here. Yeah. Challenge accepted. Okay. There you go. Challenge accepted. Oh, okay. There you go. There you go, Trazier. Very happy. I'd be happy to teach you all how to belittle the hell out of my depression. But yeah, so Urglaawe is not a... Uh-oh, did I lose my video? Did I lose my video? You know. Oh, you can see me? Oh, that's funny. You can see me, but I can't see myself. That's hilarious. All right. Awesome. Okay. It started flashing. I started seeing, having a nonlinear time moment. I started flashing back and forth between an image of me from maybe 10 minutes ago and the live. So I guess it was trying to present the whole nonlinear time thread to us in a positive manner. But they can fix this Facebook Live stuff. So, all right. So because I'm not feeling good again, I think we're just going to kind of skip over to questions. Feel free to ask some questions. I would like to, make sure you get some of this. And again, I'm sorry. This might go up overnight. Yeah, this is a very depressing live sex show, isn't it? You have become, you've become unstuck in time. Zathras warn. If you don't watch Babylon 5, you ought to. All right. Go to the questions line. I answered one there already. Somebody's got to have something, even if it's way out there. It doesn't even have to be related directly to this. You can ask any question that's Urglaawe related. I like talking about this stuff, obviously. My problem is shutting up about it. Back to the Urglaawe group. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Flea is acting wacky for me. All right. I'm stuck in time. All right. We got anything else here? No, I don't want to go just yet. We will go soon. But I just want to see if anybody has any questions related to any topics. I mean, we got this tower ritual coming up. We finally started putting stuff out on, but we still have to finish the program for it. That's this Thursday. And it's going to be interesting to see how that comes out. Plus then, shortly after that comes Vananak, which is usually one of my favorite holidays. Connection with Note and Eviker Jaeger. Okay. Are you referring to something I said or wrote anywhere? Oh, well, not specifically stated. It sure could be. I mean, here's one. Death is necessary. What was the thing that it was? I think it was Family Guy, where Death got injured and nobody was dying, and Death is, or Harry Potter. The whole the need. Death is a need, because otherwise we'd be very full very quickly, and we would definitely exhaust all of our resources of food and everything. Of course, plants also wouldn't die, I guess, if there were no death. But Eviker Jaeger, the need, okay, and there's actually a better example even than that. Death is necessary, but if you read Eviker Jaeger's myth, which is on Deitsch mythology, I'm sure that Sophia will have the link done before Sophia will have the link done before I even start to type it in. But the big thing with Eviker Jaeger and the colonists or the settlers in Lynn Township was that they recognized their wrong. I mean, I have to tell you, the story is very odd to me to begin with, because I just can't imagine most of the farmers, even that early on in settlement, actually setting it up so that the land would erode that easily. Plus, that land is not quite as fertile right there anyway. And so the long and the short of it is that settlers moved into the area that's now known as Lynn Township in Lehigh County, Pennsylvania. And when they did, they cleared the land of trees, which is just like setting up for a dust bowl. Which, these people, even if they were only recently here only recently here off the arriving in Philadelphia, they were still probably farmers back in Germany or the German lands, and they probably knew better. But I guess that the story says that they cleared the land, and the land was already not as fertile as some of the other land around them in other regions. So the crops, even when they did grow, didn't grow particularly well, and it took on this name of Alamengel. And Alamengel means all deficiencies. And if there actually is an Alamengel road in Lynn Township even now, and the story goes that because of the cleared land, and they ended up having a crop failure, and it was a bad growing season, and so they didn't have anything prepared. But now, since it was not just a bad crop season, but a bad weather season, the actual natural vegetation was also reduced. So a lot of the wildlife left the region. So now winter set in, the colonists were ill-prepared, didn't have enough food, and then they didn't have enough food, and I'm missing something here. Oh, and they had brought this on themselves by not actually having been thoughtful enough and been poor stewards of the land. And that's what essentially the shame of Alamengel was poor stewardship and ill treatment. So anyway, the Hexerai practitioners, because that region is always said to be associated with sorcery. Hexerai practitioners in that region, and brokers too, what they did is they advised everybody to change the way they were doing things and to set out what offerings they could, which were ending up being pieces of cloth and straw or hay. I actually think it was straw, but I've heard hay too. Just showing that they had recognized what they did wrong and learned their lesson. So one night, while they were all sleeping, they heard this terrible, ferocious sound in the sky, and and in the morning, when the sun rose, they looked, and all the game had been driven back over from the other side of the Blowbotic. The Blowbotic is it's Blue Mountain. It is a large ridge that runs through much of Pennsylvania, and actually continues. It goes at the Delaware Water Gap and actually continues into New Jersey. But that is where Eviker Jaeger is said to have come with the colonists and settled. And for those of you who have ever driven the Pennsylvania Turnpike east-west, when you go through those three tunnels, Tuscarora, I can't remember, Kittatinny, and I can't remember what the third one is offhand, you are passing under part of the Blowbotic. If you've driven the northeast extension of the Pennsylvania Turnpike, like from Allentown northward, you go through the Lehigh Tunnel, and when you come out at the Lehigh Tunnel is the Blowbotic, and that's the range in which some of these stories come specifically. If you come out of that tunnel and you look off to the right, off in the distance, you see my mother's hometown. She always said it looked like a little train set village, and a lot of the lore about Eviker Jaeger comes from that particular area, including from my own great aunt, who, when we were kids and heard that noise, and it is quite a noise, I have to tell you, she said, "Oh, get inside! The Eviker Jaeger's coming!" And she explained to us. She said, "He's bigger than we can understand," and she took it seriously. Now, if any of you have ever heard it, it does sound like a massive, massive, massive pack of dogs kind of coming at you in sense around. But the actual scientific theory is that they are, there's a couple of things. There's two. One is that they say it's, the Blowbotic is not really tall. No mountains in Pennsylvania are particularly tall because ours are all so ancient. But it kind of rises like out of a fairly flat valley to the south and a hillier valley to the north. But they say that that valley there and the mountain, as a mountain rises from it, does something with the air. And if the air is significantly warmer than the air right around the mountain, is the incoming air, is that they can actually make these little noises when they collide with each other. But the one I think is actually the more legitimate one is that when geese are flying on either side of that of the actual Blowbotic, especially from the south, when they're honking, they honk and it resonates, reverberates off of the mountain, and you end up with this sound that sounds like dogs. All right, let's see. We got more questions here. So yeah, I didn't finish that one. I'm sorry. My head's starting again. So I would say that yes, what ended up happening was Eviker Jaeger recognized their that they had been expressing sorrow, remorse, and changing their ways, and so death actually took pity or mercy upon them and drove the game in. And by the way, is if you read the actual myth, you'll see that this isn't actually where it came from, but this is the explanation of where Scrapple comes from. And Eviker Jaeger is our god of Scrapple. Go figure. And so yes, every year we honor, said big offering of Scrapple to him. Okay, I know I missed a couple questions because I scrolled away. So I'm going to get the one in the Facebook group first. Do societies go through the mill too? Everything goes, well, societies would go through the mill. The question is, does the mill ever go through the mill? Pretty much everything goes through the mill, but eventually the world tree will die. So what's going to happen to the mill itself? But yeah, societies, things, everything passes in one way or another. And it's usually, if you think about societies, most states have successor states that bear some resemblance to the prior one. So in a way, in a sense, yeah, I would say that societies do go through the mill. And that's actually a really good question. I want to make sure I'm going to tag that one. I want to ponder this one a little bit more because there's some potential theories, but as theories of as below and so above would say that yes, they would. But what about the cosmos themselves? Particularly since if we're in a forest of world trees, they're not all going to go at the same time, but they'll all have to go. Now you're going to send me down a rabbit hole. I want to make sure that this gets addressed. Let's see. I'm going to tag myself if I can. Somebody tag me on that, on Mara's question there in the question thread, because I actually want to think about that more. That's a really good question. I see. What am I saying? Oh, how do we spell the signs to a welcome hola? Okay. All right. Stevie, excellent question. I will type it in here. This is how I say it. My vision's getting screwy. Now, we say it. Now to answer Stevie's point, you oftentimes will them common form. But you will also see Vilkum. Okay? And there actually can be a plural form when more than one person is being welcomed of Vilkomt and Vilkomt. But you won't really see those on hex signs. Those more with the two spellings. Well, first off, there still is no standardized spelling in Deitsch, which I tend to follow. Which I had just changed some of my own the spelling systems that I grew up with. I tend to go with the spelling system that's utilized in here. But if you look in here, sometimes you'll see like multiple entries that are very similar in terms of they're the exact same word with maybe 2 or 3 different renditions of the spelling. But I tend to follow that one. It's calls a system used called Buffington Barber. Buffington Barber. But it's a modified one. Buffington Barber, I think it was the 50s, they started to try to stand spelling following orthography closer to German, but allowing for our specific sounds like the AA, that all sound. Plus some, we only in names do you ever see umlauts really. We tend to spell umlauts out with diphthongs, EE, well actually AE. EE is sometimes rendered like that. IE, but they're not. Yes, and we are. And I mean, essentially, whatever we use, whatever spelling systems we're using for anything within Urglaawe, that is what we're going to try to have be the standard, just like Sophia explained. When I was teaching at Kutztown, it was very difficult because one of the books that we used, and we didn't have many options because they already had the books ordered at the time that I got hired to do it. It was a great grammar. It's a little bit dated in terms of its content, but the problem was that it didn't use a spelling system anywhere close to the best dictionary that we have, number one. And number two, there were some words in that book that were spelled 2 different ways, and there was one word that was spelled 3 different ways in the same book. And that gets kind of annoying. Sometimes we don't have much of a choice, and this Vilkum and Velkum, these are regional variances. Funny thing about the letter O in Vilkum. Where I come from, all right, this is to throw up, Kotze, okay? To vomit, okay? But if you say it, it sounds like this, and this is what the Dutchified English word is. It sounds like katze. The O becomes unstressed and is so the O in the Vilkum with the O is Vilkum, while the U is Vilkum. And where I grew up, it's Vilkum, but not that far to the south, it's Vilkum. So I actually tend to prefer to stick with Vilkum, and for one major reason. This is the verb to come in German. Okay? This is the verb to come in Deitsch. So because of the difference between those two there and how we spell and pronounce kuma, I would go with Vilkum because it's closer to the word from which it's derived. Let's see, what else? I saw something else if you want to answer. I thought there was something else I'm missing. Is there another question asked that I missed? Yeah, the language thing, Deitsch is still the 3rd most widely spoken language in Pennsylvania after English and Spanish. And the funny thing is the number of speakers of Deitsch is growing. But the sad part is that it's actually getting more different from one region to another. They've pretty much lost a dative case in Ohio where the dative case has got to stay, particularly because the dative case is how we express possession in Deitsch. Our possessive case is gone. We were talking about this. I was talking about this with family members about, they still call Deitsch a dialect of German, but there's a lot of differences between the two, especially grammatical, not just spelling or pronunciation. Some things you can actually learn. We've got a couple more minutes. I'll throw some stuff out. A lot of times, this is some clues for those of you who speak German, that EU in German very often, not always, becomes a EI. Okay? Yeah, well, they're saying that if the Amish and Mennonite population continues to grow at the pace that it is, it's going to end up it's outpacing everybody. And but also, it's not even just the plain sectarians who are trying to grasp it. A lot of so-called fancy Deitsch people are trying to, get the language back into their families and everything too, even if they start in small ways. The problem, of course, is that we just don't have the resources to actually create more language programs. I would love to see them in the schools. This is something that's unique and distinct to this particular region, although we have other pockets everywhere else. It really is. Our language was targeted, and that's another reason I have an issue with it. It was targeted under the suppression to try to weaken any German identity that was held within the country, and the language is something that I work very hard with. I just wish I actually had more technical knowledge. Those of you may have heard this already. I apologize for repeating it, but a few years ago, I approached both Rosetta Stone and Pimsleur about possibly getting Deitsch language courses created through them. And the funny thing was, in both cases, the person who answered my mail was of Deitsch descent and said that she would actually love to order it too, because both of them remembered their grandparents speaking it, and they would love to be able to reclaim it. But the problem was that the startup costs were so prohibitive. Like, I had to be able to, it was, I think, $100,000 or something just to even get it started. Plus, we had to guarantee so many sales, and it was just so complicated. Then we thought about going to a recording studio and doing it ourselves. Copious spare time. I don't know. I still have dreams of that. This is something that Doug Madenford and I could probably work on together to try to figure out. But then we also need to have the venues for people to actually take the courses, and materials, and you need venues. And the university, Kutztown was great. The only problem I had with Kutztown was I was only there to teach one night a week, and it was from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock. It was 3 hours, like a double course time. And I was thinking to myself, there's no way for these folks to really actually master this unless they start talking it during the week. And the more that, like I said, I even suggested when the professor returned from his Fulbright scholarship and I stepped out, I said, they probably need 2 or 3 or 4 language classes per week to try to keep it active in their mind. Otherwise, once they go home, they might not think about it unless they do the homework, because there's not a whole lot of TV shows for you to watch. You can't, you can watch in Berks County, you can watch BCTV, and they do have Deitsch programming on there, but it's mostly songs, which songs are a great way to learn music, and there are Deitsch songs on YouTube, but many of them are grammatically incorrect. But George Britton songs, hold on, find his stuff on YouTube. His stuff is actually grammatically accurate and traditional. Because music really is a good way to learn language, because you oftentimes, when you figure out what they're trying to convey, you learn which words pair well with which words, as opposed to saying, like in English we have a spigot and we have a faucet. But if you live in an area where people say faucet, they're going to look at you funny if you say spigot. So in Deitsch, you may end up learning that this word goes with this word goes with this word. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Here's one of his songs. But you might be able to launch from this. His voice is kind of operatic. His voice is kind of operatic, but he gets the point across. Let's see. Yeah, the language actually, what was it? What year was it? I had actually written to the governor it was the one who came in before Rendell, the one who was leaving before Rendell, Republican. And I had written to them saying, what we should do is we should embrace the fact that there's still these pockets and it could be a great tourism thing. People like when they come to the Deitcherei and actually feel like they're somewhere different, because in the right spots, you actually can feel like you're somewhere like completely different. And he actually wrote me back and said some ideas for like street sign replacement. There are still Deitsch street signs in some places, but like for street sign replacement, signage in both languages, and actually really pushing the culture out there in the areas that are heavily Deitsch. He thought it was a great idea, and he was, he said, if we get back in the next term, maybe let's keep this discussion going. Well, unfortunately, he didn't get reelected, and so we missed that opportunity. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's exactly the problem. The resources in Deitsch are still too minimal, and and remember, many plain sectarians view speaking Deitsch as an act of like the opposite of vanity, as an act of not shame per se, but an act of being lowly. I'd say that's more of a prior generation's take. A lot of Mennonites are actually speaking it quite zealously and happily, but there's other fallout too. When you come and you are not Amish and you start to speak to Amish in Deitsch that sounds like the Deitsch that they grew up with, they have a tendency to think you were shunned. That's always exciting too. Then they don't know whether they're supposed to talk to you or not. But it's true. And there is still bigotry against Deitsch in some places. But it actually is it's a very effective language. We do have modern terms, but they're just not used widely enough because these dictionaries aren't coming out frequently enough. That's why on Deitcherei.com now or .net, Deitcherei.com. I've had, what? Stupid vision. EI. CHERBI. Come on, Rob. Court. I used to have Deitcherei. I used to have all these sites, and then I didn't get notice of a renew on something, and now some company in Japan owns one of them. All right, why am I having this problem? I didn't happen again. Deitch.org is the one that goes to Japanese, so it's www.deitcherei.com. Yeah, BW, that's what it is. I'm going to paste this in here. On that site there, you'll see pages for words that are missing from the dictionaries, English to Deitsch, and words, Versammlungen von die Badebecher Deitsch to English. So you can have a look around there, and I think that's it because my brain is definitely fried. If anybody has any questions that I didn't address, please do post them in there, and let's all hope that next Sunday I don't have this stupid migraine stuff hanging over my head. So anyway, I have no idea what I look like in the video. For all I know, my head's off the side of the screen. But thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate you coming, and hopefully I made sense through all this. And I'm going to keep these going because I really do enjoy them. So I hope you do too. Hail and thank you.